Hi, I'm Elaine, a math and science specialist from Great Solution. Have you found yourself spending hours and hours working on questions after questions, but not seeing your hard work pay off? Completing stacks of past year papers with barely any improvement in your grades? Well, you're not alone. In fact, this is one of the most common problems students face. Now, everyone says practice makes perfect. This isn't entirely true, not in this context at least. Instead, let's make this quote a little bit better by saying, targeted practice makes perfect. Excelling in math is not about the number of questions you do, but doing the right types of questions. In short, quality over quantity. It is not as simple as training for a 10K run. Can't complete 10 km on your first try? Try again. The more you run, the further you can get without stopping. In this case, yes, practice makes perfect. However, it is just not as simple with math. We first have to start with a diagnosis. When you feel unwell and go see a doctor, the doctor doesn't treat you by prescribing a mountain of pills. Instead, the doctor asks you questions to narrow down the possible causes, then find the correct treatment for your symptoms. This is the approach that we should be adopting. If you've been scoring poorly in your math papers, or perhaps you've been doing quite well, but you find it hard to just move up one grade, identify the causes and treat them. Analyze your work and ask yourself, what types of questions am I losing marks over? What specific topics? Could it be direct and inverse proportions? Could it be linear graphs? Or which specific concepts? Is it forming simultaneous equations to solve a word problem? These are the questions that you should be practicing in order to see a significant improvement in your results. So ditch those past year papers and stop spending hours and hours on never-ending questions. Instead, target your weak spot by doing topical practice. 20 targeted questions beat 100 random questions, hands down. What's more, doing selective questions saves you so much time, making it an extremely time-efficient method of studying. It's a win-win. The key to targeted practice is to be as specific as possible. Say you've narrowed down 2 topics, algebraic factorization and simultaneous equations, as one of your weaker topics. Under the topic of algebraic factorization, are you weak in all 4 solving methods? Or perhaps you only need help with using special algebraic identities. Or perhaps you just need more practice with multiplication frame. As for simultaneous equations, there are 3 main methods. Are you weak in all 3 methods? Or perhaps you're familiar with most of them, but you only need help with maybe substitution method. Make a list of the specific topics and methods that you need to work on and practice questions just involving these methods. Take a look at this example list and see how we have narrowed down specific concepts within a topic. Just like the example earlier on, for factorization, maybe we just need a little bit more practice on special algebraic identities and the substitution method for simultaneous equations. Giving you more examples, perhaps for the topic of map skills, you are already good at all aspects, but you just need a little bit more practice on conversion from length to area scale. For quadratic equations, perhaps you just need a bit more practice on completing the square. So the more specific you are, the more accurate your targeted practice, the more you'll see results. By the way, that's not to say that you should neglect your other topics. Definitely revisit other topics from time to time as a maintenance practice, just to make sure you haven't forgotten the relevant concepts. For the last part of this video, let's take a look at a real example and see how we can make a proper diagnosis by further narrowing down a particular concept within a topic. So we're looking at a Sec 3 math worksheet on the topic of sketching graphs of quadratic functions, or in short, sketching quadratic graphs or sketching curves. So let's take a look at this student's work. For question 4, the first part is answered really well, but for part C, there's some struggling over here on how to sketch the graph. And if we were to take a look at question 5, oh, that's answered really well, full marks for question 5. For question 6, A is correct, but parts B and C clearly needs some help as well. So at this point, just based on these 3 questions alone, a very normal reaction from a student or parent would be, okay, we need to practice the entire topic on sketching quadratic graphs. And this reaction is perfectly normal because even though there are a couple of questions answered really well, there is also a concerning number of incorrect answers. But if we were to take a deep dive into the concepts, alright, now quadratic equations come in many forms. We have the regular form, y equals to ax squared plus bx plus c. There's also a completing the square form, y equals to x plus h squared plus k. There's also a factorized form where y equals to x plus a times x plus b. So if we were to analyze this student's work, for question 4C that was answered wrongly, this is for the factorized form. For question 5 that was answered perfectly well, it's for the regular form ax squared plus bx plus c. And lastly, for question 6, this would be the completing the square form. Alright, so this student actually did very well for the regular form. So if we were to go back to the concepts again, we could actually eliminate the regular form. This has already been done really well. So what this student really needs to practice on would be the completing the square form and the factorized form. So this is how we can be even more specific within a topic alone, and the student can actually save time by skipping on the regular form questions and only focusing on these 2 concepts. So let's take a look at question 4C and see how this student can better understand this question. Alright, if we take a look at the mistake here, the shape of the graph is wrong. Okay, and the student is unable to find out the turning point of the curve as well. Now looking at the formula of this curve, if we were to take 2 times x again, we will get 2x squared. Now when the coefficient of x squared is a positive value, the shape of the curve should be a U shape instead of an N shape. The second mistake is that this student is unable to find the turning point of the graph. Now, we can see that this student has managed to find the x-intercepts, but not the y-intercepts. Alright, the turning point of this graph happens to be on the y-axis. So, when the graph intercepts the y-axis, the value of x is 0. So, in order to find the y-intercept, all we need to do is to substitute x with 0. So let's go ahead with that. So 2 groups of x plus 2, that becomes 0 plus 2 times x plus m. That would be 0. And in the earlier parts, we have already found out that m is negative 2. So let's use that value. Alright, and this would give us a result of negative 8. So again, to recap, when the value of x is 0, the value of y is negative 8. This is our y-intercept. Alright, so the actual way of sketching this graph would be passing through the y-intercept here and the x-intercepts as well in a U shape instead of an N shape. And over here, we can also indicate that the turning point is 0, negative 8. I hope this video has given you a new perspective of how you can study the smart way instead of the hard way. Remember, quality over quantity. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in class.